Welcome to the CareEdge podcast, where we delve into the economic trends and insights. I am Sachin Gupta, Chief Rating Officer at CareEdge Ratings, and we have with us Mehul Pandya, our Managing Director and Group CEO. The agenda for today's discussion is basically to discuss the pre-budget expectations that we have for both of us, and let's see. It's very interesting time, for the I must say not an easy time for the finance minister. The global issues are quite a bit. The most important being Donald Trump's, what he will do on the trade side. People are scared about what kind of tariffs he may impose. Secondly, the geopolitical conflicts, they continue. While we've had a ceasefire on the Middle Eastern, let's hope that continues. And more importantly, the Indian economy continues to be has kind of gone down, one or two gears, and that is where the biggest stress or the issue kind of is there for our economy. So and now we approach the budget. Mehul, my first question to you is, how do you see what really can the finance minister do, in terms of to rev up our economy, and at the same time also see how are the fiscal deficit, which has been a perennial issue, is also contained.
Sure. I think, Sachin, the first budget of any government, and especially whichever, I mean, even if they are coming back for the third term, first budget is very crucial. And so is the last budget, right? Because they have to again face the elections. So last time around, when both of us were discussing on this, right, we had the context in terms of the government having a swag in the form of, let's say, almost a kind of an assured election, right?
Right.
And but nevertheless, we could still see the government focusing or getting some inputs as far as the concerns on the employment generation is concerned, right?
Correct.
And the outcome of the election, and consequent to that, the few steps which the government took,
Right.
specifically harping in the vote on, I mean, the interim budget, if we'll call it, right? They all were focused on the employment generation aspect.
Correct.
Much has changed after that. At that time, when we had this vote on account just after the elections in the month of July, we never had this issue in terms of significantly weak second quarter results. Right?
Right.
Now we have that as a reality. The kind of assumption that a country and the GDP of our size could be growing at least a normalized pace of 6.5-7%, even if there are no significant intervention, I think that has got a dent.
Correct.
That puts the government under that much of an extra pressure in terms of ensuring that the growth cannot be taken for granted. And for that to happen, it is imperative that specific measures, they need to be addressed. Right?
Correct.
So from that angle, I think the key facets which the government obviously is quite cognizant about is, number one, how to tackle the overall slump in the demand, right? Both on the urban side and on the rural side as well. Second aspect, how to revive the capex, what measures they should be taking, right?
Right.
Third aspect, while doing also all this, right, how to ensure that the fiscal discipline, which has been the hallmark of their entire two terms,
Right.
that sustains it.
Right.
My presumption is that especially on the fiscal deficit side, government will not veer off the mark. They will definitely ensure that the fiscal discipline sustains. I will actually not be surprised that the government undershoots itself also on the final
On this
fiscal
year's,
deficit. Instead of 4.9%, it potentially could be much better than that, right?
Correct.
But the tricky aspect would be to address the sentiments as far as the consumption demand is concerned. Second is revive the capex
Correct.
in a significant way. And third aspect, not to take the eyes away from employment generation, because that remains key concern areas and focus for everybody, right? So this is the canvas in which the government will have to operate.
Correct. So I think that's in a way you've kind of set the boundary conditions or the key focus areas for the government, and now I think we can discuss some of these in more detail. If you see the second quarter, slump in the economic growth rate, the large reason was because the capex which the government has been kind of incurring for the last at least a decade, that saw a slowdown because of elections. And secondly, there was the consumer demand, more so from the urban area, also saw a slowdown. And because of this, the demand or the overall growth kind of came down to 5.4%. What we have all been waiting for is the private capex, in which you also mentioned in your opening points, that is something that, so the question is, and the government has in its own ways been trying to do one of the most important being they actually cut down the corporate income tax rate,
Yes.
long time back,
Mm.
in the expectation that the free cash flow which the corporates will generate
Mm.
will come into the investment and
Right.
it will lead to more capex. But that has not happened now.
Yeah.
Do you think the government can really do something more to really, really cohort, get them, exhort them, and kind of get more capex out of them in a meaningful
Yeah.
manner?
I think, see, the private sector always would be looking at very clear-cut clarity as far as the future sustenance of the demand is concerned. If we are to put our own money into any project, we are
Right.
certainly going to look at that. And today, if we look at and take we are a private sector company in a way. Right? If we were to decide on any initiative, right, where investment is required, certainly few aspects that immediately come to our mind would be to what extent this investment would be leading us for the future profitability, right? So how that demand which is getting created, be it a services company or a manufacturing company, how that would play out.
Right.
Second aspect is that we would be looking for, if we are operating in a sector which where the policy direction matters a lot, right? We'll be indeed be looking forward to clarity on the policies
Right.
for the foreseeable future. Right? Third aspect that would be looking would be that if there are global impacts, I mean, whatever the global developments are, if they are likely to impact our sector, in
Right.
that case, indeed, we'll like to see a trajectory of that.
Right.
If these three answers to all these aspects are in the affirmative, I mean, working in our direction, right? In that case, indeed, we'll be looking forward to the investment. This aspect is playing out. The private sector indeed is looking forward to all these aspects, demand, policy making, right, as well as in the terms of the global uncertainties, how they could be impacting. And there are no clear answers for that because everything is getting intertwined. I mean, one intervention by the government on any one of these aspects potentially could be having the interlinkages in the other aspects of the policy making as well, right?
Right.
So it's a slightly tricky situation, right?
Right.
But nevertheless, it's I mean, that's how in a globally connected world, the economies have to fare, right? And that's what I think the government also would be focusing upon. I think government has done enough as far as the public capex is concerned, right?
Correct.
They have been consistently driving the investment-led growth through heavy investment in the infrastructure side, especially. A time has come where perhaps the government will have to think it's in a slightly different form. That if these aspects, in terms of spurring the private capex through a heavy investment on the public sector side, if it has not yielded the right rates, how to address this situation, right? This perhaps is the thought process which, to my mind, is also hovering over government's mind. And we could be witnessing some, I would say, the interventions from the government in this budget on this.
I think, Mehul, you said rightly, there are no easy answers. On the positive, when I look at it, the corporate balance sheets are very underleveraged. The Indian banking system is very strong. So to that extent, two parameters which normally are required for capex are pretty strong. On the adverse side, if you see the domestic demand is low, which we spoke about, and more importantly, I believe the global demand is also not really great. And in that context, China has been kind of pretty much dumping. So for an Indian entrepreneur to spend money and creating capacity when he may be a little scared about how China will kind of behave. If Chinese domestic economy is not doing great, then they will always be very, very keen to sell their products, and in that sense we will be exposed to maybe dumping or some other thing. So it's not easy. And even our overall capacity utilization today is certainly lower than 80% in most of the industry. So in that sense, it is not easy for even the private sector. While there has been a lot written about why they are not doing capex, but I think it's not easy. I think they are taking rational decisions, and we really can't say that anything is wrong in that.